All right, with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Brian Russell here, your Lunch and Learn coordinator for the PMI Western Idaho chapter. Welcome to our November event. Today we're going to hear from Mr. Joe Puz. I'll do a quick intro in just a minute, but a little bit about logistics. So as usual, as we have moved over to the Zoom webinar platform, we'll use the Q&A feature for interactions throughout this session. So there'll be times during the presentation with Joe we'll solicit feedback and commentary. So use the Q&A. If you run into any technical or help issues, you can use the chat. Dana, who's our chapter technology lead, is monitoring the chat. So if anything comes up that you need help with technically, use that chat and Dana will help as much as she can. A plug-in for next month's Lunch and Learn, so coming up on December 11th, we'll be hearing from David Barrett, and David's going to present on taking your project management career to the next level. So a little bit of coaching and some guidance on career development. So be looking forward to hearing from David next month. So with today, we're going to hear from Joe Puz. Joe's going to talk to us about tackling the two most important challenges in project management. A little bit about Joe, and he'll speak a little bit more in his presentation. Joe, PMO Joe, also known as, is an internationally recognized leader in the project management and PMO community. He's a frequent keynote speaker, author, project management innovator, and was named the 2022 America's PMO Influencer of the Year by the PMO Global Alliance. Joe speaks on topics of leadership, PMO's purpose-driven mindset, the organizational project delivery journey, and a variety of other trending project management topics. So with that, thank you, Joe, for participating in our Lunch and Learn today, and I'll hand over the presentation to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to join me. I do know David Barrett, who you've got next month, and he's fantastic. So you're in for a treat next month as well. It is Lunch and Learn. So drop into the chat. What's everybody having for lunch today? I want to make sure that the chat function works fine for all of you. I've got some questions coming up throughout the session that I want to get your feedback on. So I just want to make sure you're comfortable getting into chat, type in what's in there. So for lunch today, pasta and salad. Ooh, smoking a chicken. That sounds great. Lots of good choice of leftovers. Yeah, makes it easy. PB&J, the all-time classic. I love it. All right, so today's talk is really about tackling the two biggest challenges. And the problem with that is everybody probably has their own version of what is the biggest problem or challenge that they face. What I think we'll be able to do, and perhaps you'll all prove me wrong, is I think we're going to be able to take your challenges and indicate that they're really a symptom and maybe not the challenge, and we'll go to the root cause on something. So for the chat again here, just type in what are you experiencing as your biggest challenge, or maybe your organization that you work at. What are the biggest challenges or problems that you're running into as you're trying to execute on your projects and work project management as your organization? And then we'll address those as we talk through the rest of the time we have together. Stakeholder management, too many projects, resources, working too many projects. Kind of the consistent themes that we usually see: decision-making, people and resource constraints, scope changes. Yeah, all great items. All real problems, right? I mean, everybody runs into these. I think we all feel that same pain that you're experiencing as you write them in there. So here's what I think is challenge number one of the two that we're going to talk about today. And I think we'll see that some of these ultimately will fit into the category. And it's organizational delivery. The problem is in the project management world that we all live within, project management is focused on individuals and teams instead of the greater organization as a whole. And because of that, a lot of the things that you're writing into your chat right now are the symptoms of what that means. And we'll dig into a little bit deeper and we'll look at solutions and outcomes as we talk today. But think now about the items that you mentioned in your chat. And as I'm talking through all of this, kind of contextualize and say, man, is that a organizational challenge we have, or is that an individual or team challenge? And I'm going to guess that most, if not all of you, can put those into the organization category, maybe in addition to a team or individual, but not an individual or team. But we focus our time, right? We get project management certifications, whether that's a CAPM or whether it's a PMP or the construction certification, the portfolio, the program management, all of those are individual certifications. The PMBOK is written for an individual project manager. It's not geared towards an organization and how the organization needs to execute. And that's great to a certain extent, but it's limiting because we as individuals are hard pressed to be able to make the progress we need if there's an organization that doesn't buy into what we're doing. So to me, individual focus is a challenge that we have to overcome and work together as an organization. And if you're on the Agile side of things, it's about self-organizing teams, right? The Agile Manifesto talks to that. It's about getting a team of individuals together to be able to manage and work and groom and perform and execute their own work, which is fantastic, except what if the rest of the organization doesn't follow suit, right? Very typically at the PMO squad, when we're working with organizations that do Agile in IT, but they're not accepting of Agile when it comes to budgeting and finance. So the budget team will ask for a budget for next year's spend. Well, how do you know that if you're in an Agile execution mindset? The organization is competing with itself. So we have this challenge, right, that we have to work through. And this is where I think it comes into play as well, that I think may relate to all, or at least some of you, right? Within an organization, we find there's different pools of resources. And some of those resources have that senior employee designation. They've been around for a long time. Really, they're no longer about putting in the extra work, right? They've already been there, done that. They have tremendous knowledge. They're leveraged for that experience that they have, but rarely are they going to be somebody that steps up and leads an effort. Then you have the bigger pool of employees that are not yet reached that senior status, and they're getting the work done. They're the teammates on our projects, but they really can't afford to take on anything additional, and the organization can't afford them to take on anything additional because they need them to maintain their output. So up steps the hero, right? The go-to resource who ends up getting tapped on the shoulder all the time to figure out how to get work done. And that individual, because of their perhaps project management training, their PMP or their CAPM or whatever it may be, is viewed by the organization as the hero, the individual that's going to go lead all of the rest of us through execution. Challenge with that is that gets draining on our hero, right? It's taking the hero away from their day job. It's putting extra burden on them, extra stress and extra pressures to be able to go execute. And over time, their performance starts to drain off, and maybe even they leave and choose to go work in another organization. Not because of their capabilities or their work, but because of what's being asked of them of the organization, right? It's an individual focus as opposed to the organization as a whole. So what's the solution to that, right? The PMO squad, we came up with organizational project delivery. And oftentimes in our industry, we talk about project management maturity or PMO maturity. And there's a challenge with that. The challenge is maturity does not always equal capability. I'll give a real world example. I'm obviously an adult. My grandmother, who's still with us, she is more mature than I am, but she's not capable of driving anymore. Her maturity doesn't matter. It's her capability that matters, and she needs a ride. We have to provide that ride and transportation for her. So having additional maturity doesn't matter. Give a project management example. If you have resource management process in your PMO and in your organization, where a new project is approved, somebody in the PMO then assigns it to a project manager. The project manager then requests the resources from the resource managers out in the field. And if the resource manager doesn't respond to your request, it doesn't matter that that process may have been in place for 10 years. It's a very mature process, but the organization's not capable of executing against that. So when we look at organizational capability, it results in organizational acceptance. Does the organization accept project delivery? And as such, will we be able to then deliver change, integrate culture, and align with strategy, et cetera, that's up there? And what we found over research and working with clients and working with industry peers over the past many years is that every organization, regardless of your size, regardless of your industry, travels along these 5 stages of a journey. Ad hoc at the beginning, standardizing in the second stage, moving to organizational acceptance, then into strategic project delivery, and ultimately into generating value. In our industry, there's been a lot of talk within the past couple of months. If you were able to attend the global conference in LA this year, right, they came out with a new definition for project success, and it was about basically generating value that exceeded the effort and cost put into it. We, as project delivery resources within our organizations, the challenge for us to do that isn't our capability. Project management's not broken, it's the organization. So if we're working against ourselves and we haven't built in the standards and the acceptance, it's hard to be able to deliver. So focusing on an individual and a team is good, but what we recommend at the PMO squad is now to invest time into focusing on the organization. And we do that with a couple of different tools. And for instance, one of them is system dynamics. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But we're not going to do a deep dive on it, right? This is a lunch and learn where you're having your leftovers and your pasta and your chicken. We don't have enough time to dig into the details of system dynamics, and we can connect afterwards to maybe talk more about that as we need to. In the mindset of delivering projects, right? We are called project managers. We work in project management. Everything is about management. And ultimately, what we've recognized and we've seen PMI evolve over time is that it's about the delivery. Management and managing is part of the work that we do, but the organization is concerned with the output that we're producing. So it's about project delivery using project management capabilities and skills and techniques and having that spread throughout the entire organization, right? So if we think about the accidental project manager, he or she probably doesn't have the title of project manager, and they're still running projects in their department. That happens in most organizations around the world. That's okay, right? We don't have to have every project run by a project manager, but the organization should still understand how to help that accidental PM deliver projects, just like we would with a mature PM, such as we are, who may have a certification and years of experience. So OPD is about the organization. It's not about the individual or the team, although those will come into consideration. So let's talk a little bit more about OPD and dig into some of that, right? I mentioned system dynamics. And system dynamics was developed out of MIT back in the 1950s. I was fortunate enough in my career to get an executive certification, continuing education program through MIT. And when I was there, I took this system dynamics course and it changed my life. It helped me understand that it fit perfectly into project management because ultimately it's a relationship between all the parts of a system. And as all of you know, nothing we do on projects or within portfolios is isolated. However, we're not trained as project managers to think about all of the other items, all of the other parts of the system that influence what we work on and how we work. For the most part, we're focused on our team, we're focused on our deliverables, and we're focused on moving the project forward. And we don't take into account all of those other elements that are influencing us. And that's where system dynamics comes into play. So what does system dynamics look like? And we'll dig into this a little deeper. And again, we're not going to get super detailed on system dynamics. It's a pretty complex item, but we will bring it up today. And then, of course, we can connect afterwards to get into greater detail if you want. So I'm sure most of you have seen this, right? It's the standard initiation through closure on a project, standard project management process. And this is called open loop. It's an open loop process. And what that means is if you picture a loop or at a circle, if a circle goes all the way around and you close the loop, you have a full circle. On this process, it's linear. It just keeps going out forever and it never closes back on itself. So in an open loop process, it doesn't receive any of the feedback. It's a project management process that ultimately is built into itself. It's self-contained. And within that, we as project managers follow this process and we don't pull the organization in throughout the establishment, utilization, and development execution of our process. It's our process. We do that to you. You follow the process just like we follow the process, and the outcome should be at the end project closure. The challenge with that, though, is that's not the way the rest of the organization works, right? The way the organization works up in this green box is a closed loop method. So an example will be, we're kind of at that time of year where we're developing strategic goals. Those strategic goals then get handed off to somebody in the operations world. Those operation decisions are made of how to help achieve a strategic goal, and those impact the current state within an organization. The current state gets changed, and that feedback goes back in to make operational decisions. And because of those, side effects occur. Those side effects then feed back into the current state, which then impact operational decisions. And at the same time, external influences come into play. And all of these things are forming a loop within our organization that every department goes through and executes, except project management team. So let's think about that in practical example. We just had an election. Every Monday, I go out to Indeed.com and I do a search of project management open positions in the United States. And for the past 3 to 4 months before the election occurred, there were around 33 to 34,000 positions open on that Monday morning. The Monday after the election, there were 67,000 open positions listed. So an external influence impacted our organizations to be able to say there's stability. Now we have a chosen future president, and the unknown is removed. Forget which party he or she's with. Doesn't matter. It was the removal of uncertainty. It was an external influence into that. An example to continue that further is we had interest rates were reduced. Therefore, organizations had a little more buying power, and they were able to use their capital to go purchase something that they may not have been before, like a new project manager. So all of these external influences are impacting the organization in a way that's providing feedback into the organization so that the organization can make decisions. In the project management space, we may say, let's look at our portfolio. The portfolio is being ranked 1 through 10. We're going to work on the first project first, and it's going to go. And maybe monthly, we're going to do a portfolio review, or quarterly, we're going to do a portfolio review, and we'll approve new projects. Well, what happens if the organization has availability to capital that could pay for a project that was number 2 that we didn't approve? Do we have to wait for a quarter in order for us to begin that project because that's what our process says? In the business world, outside of project management, they would take that information and they would make a decision immediately and act upon that. That's how an organization functions. In project management, again, we're focusing on the team and the individual, so we miss out on that capability. What we've done at PMO Squad is a lot of research on this, of course, and one of the items we've done is we've asked organizations, earlier this year, we did a research report, and we asked leaders to rate where is their organization, right? Not an individual, but where is the entire organization as it relates to their journey on project delivery? Are they at ad hoc, which means they have no process? They probably don't have any roles. It's just people doing projects when somebody has an idea. And 15% of the organization said that's how they operate today. Standardized, stage 2, is ad hoc. Then somebody said, hey, I really liked how you did that status report. Why don't we do that on every project? So now there's a standard that's established. Somebody had built together a project charter, and man, I really like that project charter. Let's add that in so every project uses a project charter. That's creating a standard. So 36% of the organizations responded they've hit that standardized approach. Add that into ad hoc, you've got 51% of the organizations who responded are in either ad hoc or standardized. Level 3, organizational delivery, means they accept your process. So if you have a standard, we'll go back to the resource management example. Your standard is resource are assigned based on a request and the resource manager responds. If they don't respond, that means they haven't accepted your process. So you have a standard, but it's not accepted. When you reach acceptance at stage 3 is when you ask for the resources, the process is followed. The organization is capable to execute that. And when the organization buys into that across the board for all of your processes, you now have organizational acceptance, and a quarter, 25% of organizations have made it this far. Next up is strategic. In this case, you're taking the organization's strategy and you're lining up all of the work that comes after it to ensure that you're delivering that work with the capability you've built, becoming standardized and then accepted. And that's at 17%. And then lastly is generating value. And we always get feedback on this one. It's like, you mean I'm not generating value on my project unless we get all the way to stage 5? And it's no, remember, this is about the organization generating value, not your project. Everybody's project that they're executing provides some value to the organization. But the organization isn't generating value yet. I'll use an example, right? One we can all relate to, my iPhone. The iPhone comes out every September. There's a new iPhone that's released. Apple generates value because of their ability to deliver every September on that new iPhone. The organization has accepted that that's what they're going to do. Strategically, it's in their plan, and then they can count on the value being generated from their ability to deliver because of that. The organization is working collectively, and only 7% of organizations have reached there. So where is your organization, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, drop it into chat. Do you think your organization, not your PMO, not you as a project manager, but your entire organization, do you think you're ad hoc? Do you think you're standardized? Do you have organizational acceptance of everything that you do? Are you at that strategic level, or are you generating value? Pop it into chat, and let's see what some of your results are. We've got a 4, strategic, 3, 4. Got a lot of strategics. And this is what we find typically when we come to have a chat like this with a chapter, and a lot of people will say strategic. In a couple of slides here, we're going to talk about the criteria we use to be able to identify where you're at. And when we have that discussion, we recognize people pull themselves backwards and they're not truly into the strategic stage yet, which is okay. None of this is right or wrong. It's just an evaluation of where you are, and then the work that you would need to do to be able to progress your organization forward. Not every organization tries to make it to generating value. The amount of investment that it takes to be able to get there to that point may not be worth it. It may be fine to stay at standardized. You may be fine to be in organizational. So every organization has to evaluate what their needs are along with the investment they're willing to make. But then we have to also look at what some of the benefits of getting further along the way. Another part of our research, we asked the respondents to be able to let us know what percentage of the features that are in your PPM solution are you using, right? Are they being utilized? So consider if you're using maybe Asana or Monday.com, Clarity, Primavera, Microsoft Project Online. Again, there's so many different choices out there, so we didn't limit the choices, but whatever you have, how well are you using the different features within that system? And you can see here, the further that you move to the right as an organization in your capabilities, the more utilization you're getting out of that tool, right? 87% utilization for those organizations that reach generating value. So why is that important? How is that a benefit? Well, think of the cost. If you're paying, just picking a number, $10,000 a month for your PPM solution, and you're only using it ad hoc or standardized, you're below 50% of the features in there, you're missing out on some of the capability that tool will provide you, and you're not getting the same return on investment as an organization that's moved further to the right. So there's the cost side of that, but then there's also the benefits. If you're using resource management and portfolio scoring and resource assignments to be able to manage the work and workflow within your organization, and you're in ad hoc or standardizing, you're most likely not using those features the same way as you are in generating value. So you're working harder, you're less efficient, you're not getting the same benefits of the tool. So from an organizational perspective, they drive value out of the software they use, the work that the organization's doing, and everybody can find that benefit by having additional capability and not just maturity of process. So how do you know which stage you're in, right? It's a fair question. And what we've done as we've helped organizations work through the journey that they're on is we've identified 7 key criteria that every organization can go through. And based on your responses to those criteria, it would determine which stage of the journey you're on. So we'll walk through for stage 1 here, ad hoc, right? So the criteria, number 1, is organizational structure. Do you have a PMO? Is there any sort of organization that's built for project delivery within the company? And the answer here is none. There's no structure, right? There's an individual who gets tapped on the shoulder to go run a project. He or she is most likely a SME, right, within their organization in that area. And there's somebody that can get stuff done. So they say, hey, can you go do this? But there's no structure. So it's just at will. You don't know when it's coming, you don't know who's going to do it, and ultimately you're probably the hero that's getting tapped over and over again. What is the organizational capability? Well, it relies on that individual. So the person gets tapped on the shoulder. In the project's execution is going to depend on that person's capability. How well can they lead a team? How well can they find a way to be able to organize and plan out the work to get done? There isn't a org capability that exists. We're relying on the individual. And I'm sure many of you feel that within your organizations. Does the organization accept it? No. I mean, how many times have you been in a situation where you're working with your team and you're trying to drive them into a direction and there's pushback, right? They're not accepting it. They'll say, well, I've done this before myself, and here's how we did it in that example. And now you're not working together to deliver a project. You're competing with one another over the energy to get the work done. So the org hasn't accepted what you're working on at the ad hoc level. Criteria number 4, right? Is there a portfolio of work? No, there's none that exists. So it's random. Just when a need comes up, somebody gets tapped on the shoulder, right? When there's a portfolio in place, everybody can see the work that's coming. There's some level of review of that portfolio, and then decisions can be made about what to be worked on and when. Feedback loops, right? We talked about those feedback loops within system dynamics. Are there any feedback loops happening? Most likely there are, because there's water coolers and people can provide talk that way, but it's accidental. There's nothing intentional set up in an ad hoc organization to be able to capture that feedback and adjust what you're doing. Think about retrospectives and lessons learned or debriefs. What we do on our projects, that's organized, that's planned, and that's intentional that happens during a project so that we get feedback and we're able to execute on it. In the case of an ad hoc organization, there's nothing structured to it. It just happens when it happens. It's completely accidental. The project management is accidental as well, right? There isn't a project manager working at the organization. There's a person running a project, but they're not a project manager, right? So at this case, it's the accidental PM. And the 7th criteria, the final one, the people. What are we doing about the people? And again, these are SMEs, generally speaking, at this stage. It's an individual who gets tapped to be the hero, right, from the prior slide that we had on here. So ultimately, when we think about OPD in the organization, if we think, when you typed in your problems, if you put resource constraints, that's an organizational problem, not a project management problem. When you had put in, let's take a look, communication between different departments and escalations, that's the organization working together. Resource constraints, scope changes, all of those related to the organization. And we focus our time and energy as an industry on the individual or team gets us through ad hoc and standardized. When we start to gain acceptance and bring all of that across the organization, we're then able to get utilization of project delivery through alignment with strategy and then generating value. There's a lot of talk in our industry now about aligning projects strategically, and I'm all in favor of that. However, the data and all of our research and all our work with clients at the PMO squad tells us if you align your strategic items, your strategic portfolio, while you're still standardized and don't have acceptance, you're not going to get the results you're looking for because you're still going to have people pushing back against you. The org hasn't accepted it, and therefore you won't get the delivery. You'll get the alignment, but not the delivery. So ultimately, when we think about challenge number 1, the solution is building organizational capability and acceptance and utilizing feedback loops. So it's about the organization, resulting in teamwork and commitment, and we get the results we're looking for better than what we're getting than if we're just working with an individual or a team. Make sense to everybody? different idea, different concept for people to think about, because we're so engrossed into our day-to-day work as an individual working within teams. But when we take a step back, we wonder and evaluate how capable is our organization. We start to identify that a lot of our project management challenges are actually organizational challenges. And we now have a framework in place to be able to go satisfy those. So what are some immediate actions, right? You're here today. What can we do to take away? Identify which stage you're in. Don't be a victim. Don't say this is happening to me. Think about ways that we can get the organization to be able to improve. Identify and put in not accidental feedback loops, but intentional feedback loops, and not just lessons learned, but throughout the organization, much as different departments have done as well. And we're project managers, after all, so then build a plan and work the plan. Okay? Thumbs up, we'll move into challenge number 2. This one's a little bit different, but related, of course, because it's project management. Again, if we think about the PMBOK and the CAPM and the PMP and everything, project management has been focused on what we do and how we do it, rather than why we do it, right? So we want to make sure that we're focused on what and how, yes, but first and foremost, the why. Okay, so leading with purpose. For those of you, obviously at the end, I'll invite you all to connect with me if you haven't already. And one of the things you'll see, the younger, less bearded version of myself, I hosted a podcast radio show called Project Management Office Hours. And one of my guests, Antonio Nieto Rodriguez, who you may know, he's one of the worldwide leaders in our industry. He and I had a conversation about purpose, and I'm going to play that for you now. It's about 3 minutes or so. So sit back and listen to Antonio talk about purpose.
Yeah, I'll share a very simple tool which I think is so powerful. And again, I don't understand why these methods never cover its purpose. I just don't understand why every project management methodology, every PMO starts with a business case. We know business cases are nice. They always look great. I've never seen a bad business case. They're all super sexy and of course they want to be selected, right? But we know that this is a big flaw and you have optimist bias. And who talk about the purpose? Why don't we think about why are we doing the project? And you cannot imagine, I think 99.9% of PMOs and project management will tell you about their project, like we are replacing the HR system. And I say, and this is how they talk. This is our project, replacing HR system. And I say, but why are we doing the project? And they say, well, because the all want is all. I say, that's not why we're doing it. Say, and then you ask them why. So the why is the most important, because basically the new tool offers a bit of a community functionality, a bit like the Facebook type of social media. And actually our employees are not very engaged. They're not happy in the last survey, and some of them are leaving, the best talent. So you're moving now from an HR system to engagement of the people because there's a community functionality. And then I asked the project leader, why? Why do we need that? Why do we need the community? Because communities will let people speak up, they will share more, they will feel more belonging, so we'll have more engaged people. And then I asked, but why do we need more engaged people? And they said, well, basically, if we're more engaged, the company will do better, will attract more talent, people will stay, we're happy. And so, but that's why we're doing the project. The project is not replacing the old HR system. Your project is huge. It's such a big project. And the purpose is to make our company more engaging for employees. And then I asked, by when? And then, well, by when? It's January 1st, 2022. And how can I measure? Well, there's a survey again in January, and we want to reach 50%. So now you're telling me that your project in January is going to create more engaged people, 20% higher. And you see, this is the most powerful tool, Joe, that I know, because estimating value is very difficult. Let's be honest. And I will not be able to find a formula to do it. It's just very hard. And I know benefit structures and so on, but the purpose is something that we need to get used to it. People don't care about the business case. Nobody gets excited by a 10% return on investment. I don't know why project management methodologies never talk about purpose. Learn to talk about purpose. Learn why we're doing the project. If there's no purpose, don't do the project. You're not going to get engagement. Nobody's going to buy it.
So that is Antonio's view on this, and I just so happen to agree with it. And of course, at the PMO Squad, we have a product when we help organizations build PMOs. It's called the purpose-driven PMO, right? And for us, PMO is purpose, measure, optimize, right? It's not project management office or portfolio management office or program management office. Know your purpose. If you understand that purpose, measure, are we delivering it? And then if we are delivering or we're not, find ways to be able to optimize. And of course, this isn't a standalone view of mine or Antonio's, but there's a great book, right? It Starts With Why by Simon Sinek that's been out. And it's talks about the golden circle, right? Why we do something, starting at the center and working our way out. But oftentimes we start at the outside and work our way in. What do? We're project managers. How do we do it? We have a playbook. Why do we do it? I don't know, because they told me to. The reverse is what Antonio talked about. Why are we doing this HR project, right? It's that building employee engagement by 50%. How are we going to do that? We're going to assign a team. What are they going to do? They're going to follow our process of project management. You can see the difference between the two mindsets and approaches, and starting at the center of why as opposed to the outside at what. And Simon Sinek had talked about this in greater context, right? It's people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? Nike doesn't even advertise that it's a sneaker company. Nike advertises just do it. They sell products on their why. They don't sell products on what they do. That's the mindset that the world has recognized in product development. And we in project management, working within organizations, have to be able to understand and move forward with. So a little bit of an exercise. In the chat again, take a minute here and just type in, what are you doing here today? What is your reason for attending today? Let's see what everybody has to say. Typically, we'll get something like grabbing a PDU, had an open hour. It seemed like it might be an interesting conversation. MBA program, trying to see PMP, add value, expand on mental models, PDU city, Jennifer, there's an honest person, right? James, investing in me. Expanding a growth mindset. Yeah, I love it. But that's not why you're here today, right? That's what you plan to get out of today. Why you're here today, PDU City, is to stay in your job, get promoted in your job, to be able to get enough financial income with holiday season coming up to take care of my family, right? The why for us as individuals is usually related to family or self or growth. And we do things in the project management space to help us drive and grow ourselves. And we take that into purpose with a lowercase p and an uppercase p. The lowercase p is I'm here for a PDU. The uppercase P on purpose is I'm here to ensure that my family is taken care of. And in order to do that, I need to make sure that I'm growing and advancing in my career and that I get the PDUs to maintain my PMP certification so that I don't jeopardize my family. Understanding the difference between those two things allows you to build an emotional attachment to something and drive you at the core deeper than just I showed up for work today and got some PDUs. Whether or not we recognize that, that happens in our brain subconsciously, and that's always happening through where we work within our organizations, right? Why does our PMO or why does this project exist? Right? If you're running a PMO, there's a little bit of a different perspective. If you're running a project, it's slightly different as well, right? How does your PMO provide value, and what does your PMO do to stay relevant? And each of those have a sub-item that comes in before it. When we think why first, we also want to know who's defining that why for us. Right? I'll give an example similar to what Antonio had talked about. PMO squad was helping an organization implement a new CRM system. And we went to as we do with all projects, we start with purpose. And we went to all the team members and we asked them, why are you working on this project? And their answer was, we need to upgrade the CRM system to the latest technology. We then went to the executive leadership team and asked them that same question. And they said, because we haven't been able to provide a raise for our employees for 2 years, and we need to expand to different markets to allow our company to grow, and we think this CRM system allows us to do that better than the old system. Whoa. I mean, it's the same company, but 2 different understandings of why we're working that project. As project managers, if we're leading team members who are only thinking about upgrading a system, are we going to get the buy-in to something that's actually being run to help me get a raise next year? When we need to work a weekend or work late on a day, I am more apt to do that if I know this is actually going to have a different meaning than the one that I currently have on my project. So what we do, absolutely important. How we do it, absolutely important. But it's stale, it's stagnant. It doesn't get deeper to an emotional connection with our project teams to allow them across the organization to invest in trying to achieve strategic and value generating outcomes. So why we work on something becomes more important than how we do it or what we do, right? So challenge number 2, the what and the how. Solution, define the purpose. Work from the inside out. Start with why before what and how. And the result is the same as we saw before. Better teamwork and commitment in achieving results in a better way. What are some immediate actions that you can take at that? Boom, changed mindset, right? This one's an easy one. I can start working today with a different mindset from the inside out. I'm not going to be as concerned. I'm still concerned, but not as concerned with what we're doing and how we do it until I've ensured that the team is aligned to the why. Do we even know the real why? As project manager, have I spoken to the sponsor and have I identified the real why we're doing this within our organization and then shared that with the team? Understand that purpose and then align everybody around that purpose. Make sure we're working collectively for that outcome. And then ultimately, right, as we said, build a plan and work the plan because we're project managers. So if we think back to the beginning, right, what's the biggest problem we face in organizations with project management is we're focused on the individual. Resource management is not the problem. It's our organization doesn't accept the process we've built for resource management. Engaged sponsors isn't the problem. It's the organization hasn't trained the sponsor to allow them to know their critical role within the organization. We have a cap and a limit to our capability as individual project managers. And that limit is really driven by what the capability of the organization is. I can only push a rock, the project management rock, so far up the organizational hill. I can't get it all the way to the top unless the rest of the organization is working with me to ensure that we're all working collectively towards the same outcomes. And ultimately, those outcomes need to be tied to why we're doing the work, right? Executive leaders do not care what our project management process is. That's an expectation of them that we have one. Their other expectation is that we're delivering the outcomes that we need for the organization to achieve the why that they've built. So understanding the importance of why before what and how. So that was a lot of information in a short amount of time, and I hope it was valuable for everybody. I think we want to open up for questions here. We've got 5 minutes or so to be able to talk through any questions that everybody may have. A little bit of information again as you're getting your questions written up on the PMO squad. We're out of Phoenix. We're a national firm that helps organizations deliver projects better. Some of our services here, project staffing, consulting, technology work, with our PMO as a service, purpose-driven PMO, and of course, OPD. What questions do you all have for me? Comments, thoughts? What can I do to be able to help answer any questions that come to mind for you?
A thought-provoking discussion for sure on thinking about the why. I mean, I know I'm guilty of thinking about, I was in a meeting this morning about upgrading one of our software solutions. And the discussion was around, well, we have to upgrade because it's part of the contract. But that doesn't really speak to the value that's being driven out of that. So I'm actually going to take that and go back to the executive sponsor for that and get her perspective on just what is the why. See what she has to say.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Others, use the chat. Any other questions, feedback?
Also, certainly invite everyone to connect with me. You can listen to my LinkedIn profile and connect with me out there if we're not already connected.
Nice. Very good. So get some comments within the chat.
And Elisa, fantastic. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, if no other questions, thank you, Joe, for making the time. I see. Thanks, Bill. Great presentation. Joe, thanks for making the time with us as well. Appreciate your support for the PM community. And, you know, if it works out, we could have you back again in a future Lunch and Learn.
Yeah,
For
always here to support whenever the need arises.
Excellent. Good to hear. For the audience, we will share Joe's presentation out as usual in the next day or so. So be watching your email for that.